Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we're going to begin the final Wolf Creek hearing, let's begin with roll call. Here.
Here.
Just to clarify, hopefully if you have not, you make sure you see the sign-in sheet over that table before you would depart. This is the final hearing for the petition of Drainage Works, West Branch of Wolf Creek. The objective of this project is to remove obstructions from the main channel of the West Branch of Wolf Creek, beginning at the Seneca-Hancock County line near Alveda and continuing to the Seneca-Sandusky County line near Bettsville. This time I'd like to call upon our county engineer, Mark Zimmerman, for his final report. Mark?
Thanks. On November 26th of last year, this year, I submitted my final report to the county commissioners. As far as the report recommendation, the county engineer submits this report to the commissioners to either affirm or set aside the prior order, to grant the prayer petition for the ditch petition, and instruct the engineer to proceed in accordance with ditch petition law. There are two things, and I just give a little history and explanation on where we are. The commissioners to date had first accepted the petition that was filed at the end of 2012, according with Ohio Revised Code. Ordered me as the county engineer to submit and prepare a preliminary report. That preliminary report was to estimate whether or not the benefits of the works of improvement, what the petition had petitioned, outweighs the cost of the project. Being that it is a drainage flood control project and we are in an area of the Great Black Swamp, any drainage works of improvement, of course, are valuable to farmlands and agricultural lands, as well as to homeowners and cities and villages. And so my preliminary estimate of costs and benefit did show that the benefits of the project do outweigh the costs. After that preliminary report, the commissioners had the opportunity to either order me to proceed to prepare plans and specifications and to deliver a final report, or to deny the petition, basically to say that in their opinion the costs the costs outweigh the benefits. In that stage of the project, it's pretty much, if in the engineer's opinion that the benefits outweigh the costs, the commissioners are somewhat obligated there, by no means obligated, but are somewhat obligated to go to the next step. And they are, because my findings, if this were to go to court to say, the petitioner were to say, the engineer thinks the benefits outweigh the costs, why don't the commissioners think the benefits outweigh the costs? So with that in light, and with the opinions and the information that we had, the commissioners did require me to, and when I say require, I say that because the law requires them to order me to do these things. It's not an adversarial relationship that we have with the commissioner's office and the engineer's office, but the law does say order. So the commissioners do issue an order to me and requires me to proceed to the next step, which is developing the plans and specifications. We worked with the Soil and Water Conservation District. Joe and Jason did countless hours of boating and walking of the West Branch of Wolf Creek to locate the obstructions, which for this project are log jams, sand and silt bars, and dead and leaning trees that are imminent threats. If there is a tree that is just leaning over and it's a healthy tree, then there's no point in going through the expense of removing that tree. So after months of investigation, some really bad weather, flooding last year, several windstorms, the project was completed. They delivered that information to me, and together we put together the plan for the location of obstructions, not primarily, but large log jams we classified as major, medium-sized, and minor log jams, associated costs with those. Trees were established at sizes ranging from less than 12 inches, 12 to 18 inches, 18 to 36 inches, and then 36 inches and above as far as estimation for cost of removing those trees. And sand and silt bars estimated once again as major, minor, and medium size. As far as sand and silt bars go, we are looking at the potential of removing sand and sediment bars that are obstructing the total flow of the channel. There are many cases where the inside of a curve, the water flows slower than it does on the outside of a curve. It's a natural deposition area where water drops its load. We are not going to remove a sandbar from an area that we know in a couple of years that sandbar is going to be right back, just by the nature of the channel. It wouldn't be wise and prudent use of your funds. And don't think for a second that I don't understand and the three commissioners don't understand that the money that we are looking at spending today is yours. And if the petition is affirmed. So there is public monies involved. Townships have an assessment for the right-of-ways. The county has an assessment for our right-of-ways. The state has an assessment for their right-of-way. The city of Fostoria, of course, is a large contributor to the project and has agreed to take all of Fostoria's parcels as one and handle that through the city. So there is a lot of public money, but public money isn't always viewed the same as private money, especially when it's coming out of your pocket. So we do understand that monies that are being spent or would be spent are yours. To that end, today, well, why don't I go through a little bit about how we determine the assessments. All of you that are members of the group, and the group is anyone that drains water into the west branch of Wolf Creek, are part of the petition and therefore part of the assessment schedule. You should have received an assessment paper in the mail. If you didn't, you will receive it within the next couple of days. Hopefully everybody has. On that is the benefited acreage for your parcel, the parcel number that identifies that individual parcel. Every parcel of land in Seneca County is identified with a unique parcel number. And then in there is the assessment and the zone. The zone was determined, the engineer is required to come up with a manner in which to assess. I wish that Ohio law said this is how the county engineer will assess, but they don't. They just say the county engineer shall assess. So what we did is we looked at buffer areas from the main channel to 500 feet, so those were primary benefits. Areas from 500 feet to 1,000 feet were secondary benefits, and then everybody more than 1,000 feet away from the main channel were determined to be more contributors than benefactors. Is that a word? Than benefactors, people that benefit from the project, and therefore their assessments were set very low as far as the dollars per acre. If a particular parcel of land cuts through that line, there's a line that cuts through there where there's a 40-acre parcel and 20 acres of it is in zone 1 and 20 acres of it is in zone 2. On the paper you will see that there are actually two different assessments. There's an assessment for zone 1 and an assessment for zone 2. So if you're looking at your sheets and wondering why you've got two assessments for the same parcel number, make sure you look at the zone and see if it's not a zone 1, zone 2, or zone 3 breakup. There are some places where a parcel may have two zone 1 areas or two zone 2 areas because it was broken by a road, broken by a creek, broken by some physical boundary that split that parcel, and so the acreages still should add up to what they are supposed to be. Now in determining this, we use our county's GIS program, the Geographical Information System that we have on file and of record. All of the acreages were determined based upon the computed acreage that the computer developed based on your parcel. There are a number of parcels that were not put in exactly true, and so your acreages may be off some. I've said in several meetings and said as a recommendation, and I say it again today, and hopefully people will look at it. If your assessment that we have on your sheet is different than what you have on your tax bills, which we're all getting, today, yesterday, last week, next week, make a copy of your tax bill for me. You can scratch out all the pertinent stuff. It's none of my business, and that's fine. But if you can show me that the parcel number and the acreages that are on file of record are different than what we have, of course I'll change those. And there's some people who say, well, it's only $10, it's only $5, it's only $3, but it's your $10 or $5 or $3. So, let me know what those are. If we get enough of them, I've probably got about 15 of the 4,400 parcels that are in this watershed, so that's not bad so far, that I will be correcting if the project is affirmed. If we get a lot of those, what I may do is put together a worksheet that's on the Commissioner's website that you just download, fill out the parcel number, your concern, or what you think's wrong with the information, and then those can be forwarded to me, and I can get them. And I only say that because I have one person answering phones in the office, and if I start getting hundreds of phone calls, which I don't anticipate, but if I do, then we're going to have to find another way to manage that. But I assure you that if acreages are not right, then they will be corrected. So I do have a copy of the map with me if anybody wants to see. It's not real large, but it is what it is. There are some 4,400 parcels in this watershed. That is a lot of parcels. It's a lot of people. That's a lot of mailing. We're required. There's a lot of questions of people asking, why do we have to send out this expensive mailing? Which in my opinion is ridiculous. But we are required by Ohio law to do this type of mailing. The other cheaper option that is also in Ohio law, the law is so old that type of mailing doesn't exist anymore. It literally doesn't exist. So there is a cheaper way to do than what we did. The law offers these two options, an expensive option or a cheap option. The cheap option, the post office quit doing a decade ago. So that's why it was required. And every step of this process is dictated by Ohio law. Section 6131 of the Ohio Revised Code. And we have been pretty confident in my department and what we have done, and through the Commissioner's office and what their responsibilities are, that we have followed the law. That doesn't mean that people necessarily agree with the manner in which we followed the law, but we followed the law. And when I say that, as far as how we determined assessments, how we determined benefits, how we determined costs, those things are, of course, debatable, and they are judgments. But when it comes to the law and what we have to do with the law, we have complied with those. That's a little history on where they are today at the final hearing. There are 8 factors that the Commissioners, and I don't want to speak for you, but I'll kind of run through these 8, just to let you know that these are the 8 things that the Commissioners, in their decision now to affirm or to set aside the project, that they are required to consider. The first is the cost of location and construction. The second is the compensation for lands to be taken. There are a number of projects, not this particular kind of project, but projects where you physically take land. Whether you take it through eminent domain, or take it through the right-of-way process, or take it through drainage easements. This particular project does not involve the taking of land. We are not looking at taking land and making it not yours anymore. The effect of land along and in the vicinity of the route. the effect of land below the lower terminus that may be, and the effect that may be caused, the sufficiency of the outlet, the benefit to public welfare, the benefit to land, public corporations in the state of Ohio, and then the catch-all, the last one is any other proper matter. I'm not sure what any other proper matter is, but that's for the commissioners to hear, which I know they have heard many comments, pro and con for the project. I have heard many pro and con to the project. I don't stand here as an advocate for the project. I don't stand here as a person against the project. I stand here as your engineer to give the facts to the commissioners as I see them, for them to make a decision to affirm or to set aside. So, you know, through this entire process, what we do in my department, what Soil and Water has done in assisting in that process, is try to gather the facts, and those facts we present to the commissioners for them to make a decision. So, so with that, I guess I'm here for, I mean, I don't want to.
We'll continue the hearing and begin next with questions for Mark.
Okay.
And, yeah, Commissioner. Okay. And as we go, we'll, Commissioner Wagner or either commissioner has to ask their questions first, just to restate that this is a hearing. So we are here to hear things out and to let you ask questions of us and or Mark. So we'll begin with that part. But when you, for this part and or the next part for general comments, we do want you to make sure you state nice and loud. And I know hopefully you can hear me. My voice doesn't carry loud, but state your name and just location of residence, just for our recording. That is, we have to record these things. So for that documentation that we can tie in, pick up for those notes. Commissioners, your questions first?
I just had one question, and I asked this at the last hearing. I guess that wasn't the final hearing. The last hearing, when you presented your final report, you said that there are 8 things that we are supposed to consider to determine whether we grant the petition or not. And in your professional opinion as our expert, do you feel that those 8 are satisfactorily met?
Well, all 8 of those, well, some of them have no effect. So they were not considered, but they were all considered in the report, yes.
Thank you.
And I do have a couple other things, sorry, I don't want to.
No, that's fine.
It may serve to answer some other questions, and I do this a lot, so I should write better notes down and stuff. I just tend to dabble a lot. So, as far as requirements for contacts, Ohio law requires that we send plans and specifications for comments to the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. Those plans and specifications were sent. I have been in communication several times with the Department of Natural Resources. As early as Friday of last week, they are not done with their comments. So when we get those comments, they will be incorporated into plans if it is affirmed. So we were required to do that. We did. There was no requirement for them to comment as far as that goes, but we were required to submit. We have done so, and they will be submitting comments. They just aren't done with them. They're overworked and understaffed, you know, apparently, and haven't gotten to it yet. There have been several questions as far as the Corps of Engineers go. Have been in contact several times with the Corps of Engineers. Because we are not placing fill in the project area and have no intentions of placing fill to narrow the channel or to channelize this ditch, the Corps of Engineers has absolutely no jurisdiction on the channel. As far as the work goes, they regulate the channel completely, but no effect on what we're going to do. Up until about 8 years ago, they did, but the Corps and Ohio EPA were sued, and they lost a suit by a private landowner that wanted to remove trees and jams from a ditch. And it wasn't around here that they were sued, but the Corps lost that, and federal court said that people have the right to remove obstructions from the channel, as long as they're not changing the natural flow of the channel. So, as far as Ohio EPA goes, talk to the Ohio EPA. As long as we are not filling wetlands, as long as we are not filling the channel, then they have no authority, no jurisdiction over the Petition project. So there will be no impact as far as the first stages of removing log jams and leading trees. They may when it comes to sediment bars, which we knew, but those are going to be down the road. And only because if we're going to remove sandbars, we have to put them somewhere. And if we can't get them far enough away, then we may need to pack them up along the bank, and if we do that, they may be jurisdictional. But for the beginning phases of this project, the Corps and Ohio EPA have no effect. Another thing that I had found in review and talking with many property owners is the hamlet of Bascom from State Route 18 is a natural break of water to go north and to go south. So on the watershed, State Route 18 is pretty much a watershed break. But the railroad, when it was installed many years ago, changed the natural flow of water, and because they did that, they have tiled a lot of Bascom out along the railroad and to go into the East Branch instead of the West Branch. I was there this morning. I've been there a couple of times to find where the pipes are that go under the railroad. When I find out where those are, I will redetermine that area of watershed. If you aren't draining this way, then you're not going to pay this way. If there's another project on the East Branch someday, then they would be part of that project. So although the natural flow of water went that way, the railroad did intercept a lot of that water and take it via their railroad ditch out of this watershed into the East Branch, and I will be addressing that when I can find out, when I can physically get out on the railroad and find the pipes. So those are a couple other things that might answer some questions.
Thank you.
Mark, I have a question for you. If this petition would be affirmed, could you kind of explain the repayment process and how that would be assessed on taxes? And I also understand that it would be the commissioner's responsibility to determine if that's done in a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year type thing. If you could explain that on a high level.
I'm not sure I can on a high level, but I can try to explain it. As far as assessments go, the law allows the commissioners, and once again, this is all dictated by law, is anybody that has an assessment of $25 or less is required to pay that immediately upon the project bills coming due. Anybody that's over $25, the commissioners have the ability to take those fees and pay them over a number of tax bill cycles. So when I say tax bill cycles, I mean your semi-annual tax bill. That if, for instance, you had a $100 assessment and the commissioners decided to spread this project over 5 years, that would basically be $20 a year and $10 per tax assessment.
And I have to correct just a little bit. 25 is one payment. If it's under 500, then it's 2 payments.
Okay.
If it's over 500, then the commissioners determine the assessment.
And there are between 300 to 400 property owners, about 350 parcels that are over that $500. So I failed to give you that information prior to the day, but that's where 350 to 400. It's hard to people and parcels.
Right.
Okay, so if it's under 25, it would go on their next tax bill. That would have to be paid in one payment.
Right.
If it is between 25 and 500, then it could go
And it would be
two tax bills by law, semi-annually or over 2 year period.
Semi-annual.
Semi-annual.
It's
Okay.
with the
So,
tax.
right.
It's with your property tax.
okay, so if it's a 500, they would get 250 for the first half, 250 for the second half.
Right.
If it is over 500, then we would assess if that could be over a 5 year period, correct?
3 year, 5 year. Yeah,
Okay, that's
whatever
determined by the
payment
commission.
schedule.
That's if we affirm
That's correct.
the process.
Right. If the project is well, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but it just, I guess the next steps of what we would be looking at doing, any landowner that is on the channel, that owns land adjacent to the channel, should have received at least 1, if not 2 letters from my office. The first of which was asking if landowners are willing and able to remove the dead and leaning trees themselves. The second of which to ask them if they're willing and able to remove any log jams that are in their area that they own. As an incentive to do that, and I have always argued and always will argue that the best way to do a project is for people to take care of their own piece of ground, and then we don't need to do all of this work. If you've got a section that's got trees on it that are, you know, hanging over the thing and are falling in, and you've got log jams that there's just a couple of big trees that you can yank out of there with a tractor and a chain over the next summer or when you can get there, go do it. And if you are willing to do that, then those costs that are associated with that we'll remove from your assessment. So if you've got, and those landowners that have the largest assessments are of course the ones that are adjacent to the channel receiving the biggest benefit. If you can get that done and do that yourself, or have some buddies come over, or people that want firewood, and you get those things cut down and get them out of there, that's less work the county needs to do, it's less work on the contract, that we have to pay prevailing wages on, and you're taking care of the project on your own. A project this large is difficult to just do that, but I did receive comments back from a majority, not all, but a majority of landowners. Most of the landowners that I got comments back from said that they are willing and able to remove the dead and leaning trees themselves, that they are willing to at least try and attempt to remove some of the log jams. So if this project is affirmed, what my interest is and what I would like to do is, although it's a huge burden of time on my department, is that through the spring and through the summer I would like to meet with every property that has work that needs to be done on their channel. Go through that with them and see, walk the channel with them, mark the trees that need to come down, and see if they're willing to do that work themselves. See if they're willing to yank those logs out of the channel themselves and remove the log jams themselves. If they are, and we can get that done, then we can do this project much more reasonably, much cheaper, and much more efficiently and effectively than trying to have, you know, Big Brother come in and do this project for us. So, I mean, I work for the government, and I'm a government employee, but I'm probably as anti-government as anybody here can stand, so.
And the assessments will not happen until at least 15.
At least 15. Yeah, it's, the initial stages of this project, before we could even attempt to start work, would be after crops are off next year. And that's just when we can get started. So, yeah, the process from here is not a fast process. Although if landowners can start getting work done, and that's the other reason I want to do that, is I would like to encourage people to get this work done. The more work you're willing to do yourselves, the less we have to do through government contract, which everybody knows is more expensive.
Okay,
That's no secret.
Questions for Mark, and please state your name and area of residence.
Dwight Larry, Kansas. I have two questions. Removal of sandbars, is that going to be an ongoing process, maintenance type thing? Because usually sandbars will reform. My second question is, when you was calculating the cost for landowners, was there any credit given to farmers that have filter strips and say no-till versus somebody's doing utility right up to the shoulder of the creek bank?
To answer the first question for the sandbars, the only sandbars that we are looking at removing are those that are directly the result of the log jams that are in front of them, to be honest with you. If there is a sandbar that is in the inside of a curve or a natural deposition area, we're not taking it out. I'm not going to take a sandbar out that's going to be right back. It makes no sense. So the cost for that would only be associated with those. There are a number of them that, as this, you know, with the log jam there, the water stopped, dropped its load, we would need to do some work in those areas. There was no consideration given to areas of conservation now, as far as assessments go. It was strictly a location response to the proximity of the channel.
Trish Bryan with the Soil and Water Office. If this goes on maintenance, you do get discounted for filter strips and conservation purposes if you
My question when I came here was how to make this nightmare go away.
I can tell you
Right, that's
exactly how to do that,
super,
and
yeah.
that's get people to do work on their property.
And I don't know if I'm speaking for anybody else, but we're right on Wolf Creek. Fred Smith's my neighbor, Richard Truth's my neighbor. The city of Fostoria drains into my farm. It's 12 feet deep and 3,000 feet wide several times a year, and there's not a damn thing you can do about that. And I made an agreement with Trish for Soil and Water to remove all the ash trees along the corridor. I've always cleaned out the log jam because I can't get to the other side of my field if I don't. And I clean out Steinmetz, First, and Smith sometimes to keep up with it. I'm getting billed $2,000 for work I already agreed to do for the Seneca County Soil and Water Commission. And it's gonna benefit nobody. And trees are gonna keep dying and falling in the creek, so why are we doing this?
Your
Anybody
name?
got an answer?
Your name, please? For the
Jim.
record, your name?
My name?
Yes,
Jim Lawrence and Angela Calcamuggio.
thank you. Okay. I don't know that, like I said, that there's the answer to your statement or question.
Yeah, I don't, but as far as how to make it go away, I guess the question is have people get it done. You know, there are appeals processes, you know, in the law. If a landowner does not like the decision, if the commissioners deny it or set it aside and somebody thinks it needs to go forward, then they can appeal that decision. If the commissioners affirm it, and there's somebody that definitely thinks the project can't go forward, then they can appeal that decision. You know, there are property owners have that's an option. I don't necessarily recommend that as an option, but it's certainly out there for landowners. But the petition is a result of needing the flow of water, and if landowners can clean the channel and, you know, get that done, then that's the way it needs to be done. I mean, if everyone did what you do, then we wouldn't be here today. This project never would have started.
Yeah.
Was there a limit on acreage? If you got a letter telling you can do your own work and get the assessment? I never got that letter. I got about 80 rods right along the creek.
Then you probably don't have any work to be done on your property.
But there's about 40 trees laying there right now.
Oh, well, and that's another thing that I will tell you is that the inventory that was done over the course of a year. There have been floods, windstorms, large windstorms. The one last year that had this county, Sandusky County, and Huron County closed for a week because of the trees and power lines that were down on the road. Our inventory was done before that. So the nature of what we're talking about doing and what we have estimated in this project, it's a moving target. Sandbars don't stay where they are, log jams certainly don't stay where they are, and trees certainly don't always stay up. So everything we have identified in here, it may not be true anymore. I can guarantee that our plans and specifications are obsolete.
If he was overlooked on the letter to do some work, he can get back on your list by just giving Lisa your name or giving you his name.
Absolutely.
And parcel number.
And
I'm
Yeah,
Richard
well-
Painter, in North Township of
Yeah.
59.
Painter.
And, like I say, it was all clear until last July.
Okay, yes.
Okay, well,
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely, I know exactly what you're talking about. So, what we would do is there will be another letter sent out from my office. There are 74, I think, property owners that own ground on the main channel. And another letter will be sent out, just a regular letter, and asking you to contact me to set up an appointment when it's good for you, that we can walk your property. And we want to walk all the properties again, and see what work needs to be done. And, you know, that's the only way we can kind of get a better estimate of work that actually needs to be done today, as opposed to what needs to be done a year ago.
Should make a-
Kansas. You said that if a landowner does how does that work? Do they bring in the bill that they paid to a contractor to do that, or?
Well, I'm hoping they just do it themselves.
Well, how do you make that adjustment, is what I'm wanting to know? When the job, if they do the job, do they just come in and say, we did it, and you say, okay, or do they have to provide a bill from the contractor that did it?
I'm not really anticipating seeing any bills. I guess what I'm looking at is that if you've got 20 trees on your property and we need to have those removed, that either myself and we haven't even discussed it at some point as far as administration of this, an inspection, that myself or somebody from Soil and Water will go out and see if those 20 trees are gone and just mark it off your assessment.
But how's that going to be figured, I guess? I'd like a little more detail.
Oh, as far as a dollar amount,
Yeah,
we have estimated.
Let's say you assessed $2,000 for the property, and they went in and took out all the trees and log jams. Are they down to zero now, or how are you going to calculate that? How do they verify it?
Yeah, okay, we put a price on every tree and we put a price on every log jam. And that's what we'd be looking at. If you've got a lot of work done, you've got a monstrous huge assessment, and I'm not gonna speak for the commissioners, but I really want people to do this themselves. I always have. That if you are willing to do the work, and you got a brother that does, or a neighbor that's right next door that doesn't have any work to be done, and you two are willing to go together and do a huge amount of work because you've got a couple of log jams and a bunch of trees, let's just get it done. And and if he's willing to do the work, and you're willing to do the work, and you're willing to do the work, and Bronna's willing to go out and cut some trees down and get some firewood, then probably not Rhonda, but maybe, I don't know. Prosecutor need any firewood, so yeah, we could just do it. Then we can adjust all of it.
Trees over a certain inch diameter are worth a certain amount.
Right.
And there are different dollar values associated with the size of the tree.
Yeah.
The reason I was asking is I have a landlord that lives out of state, and they're not going to be able to physically do it, but they might hire a contractor to do it.
Okay.
That's why I wondered how this process would.
Okay, and if they hired a contractor, for instance, we aren't going to reimburse the contractor.
No, I
Or
didn't
pay,
prove
but
that it was done so that you.
yeah, we'll just come look at it. We'll mark the trees need to come out. We'll go look at it.
I didn't mean to reimburse.
Okay. Yeah.
Additional questions?
All in.
Right
I
there.
got a question, David Miller. When you send the billing out and stuff, are you gotta go make sure that you're billing the right amount, for the right amount of acreage, or not?
Everything was billed based upon what the computer generated for the parcel. I'm leaving up to the property owners to find out if there's a discrepancy in the acreage, then I'll certainly change it.
Because you get, the letter we got in the mail says we have 2 acres, and we only have 8.
Okay.
So, I called you up about it, but you were supposed to get back, but you never did.
Well, I'm taking everybody that called and what I would have told you and everybody else that I'm not looking at anything until the commissioners affirm this. If they affirm it, then I'll go through and change all this, but I would have had all your stuff.
Out before you sent the billing out, or put it on the tax.
Well, 4,400 parcels, I can't check deeds on 4,400 parcels. So I didn't and I'm not going to.
Additional questions for Nick?
I got another question. Okay, now when you made this study and you did all this stuff, the flow of the water is supposed to go normally. Okay, now in your assessments, or not assessments, but your estimated cost, and when you went through there, did you go down through there and see where anybody filled in their land and made their land higher than the next person's, or dammed up a side of the ditch to make the bank high so the water wouldn't flood their land?
No.
Or did them have to come out?
I didn't look at that.
What?
I did not look at that at all.
Do they have to come out though? Are they're restricting the flow of the water when they do that, push it on to somebody else? Would that all have to come back out?
Now, this project, as petitioned, was to remove log jams, sandbars, and leaning trees. So we are not talking about doing any
Well,
channel work.
what do you do then about people that dammed up the side of the ditch
Nothing.
for the creek? Who takes care of that then?
Well, any fill that is done along a creek is regulated by the Corps.
Because you said you're not allowed, according to law, you're not allowed to do the flow of the creeks.
That's correct.
Okay, if they dam it up, and that lowland there is not getting the water this supposed to be getting, and pushing it on to somebody else, then that causes a problem down the line.
Sure.
Causing maybe somebody else's land to be grown.
It certainly could, yeah.
Well, could that have been the estimate?
No, it's not what was petitioned. It's not part of this project at all.
Kevin Williams. Mark, has the United States Environmental Protection Agency been notified, consulted, or otherwise involved in this project?
U.S. EPA is not, Ohio EPA is.
Any reason why the United States Environmental Protection Agency has not been notified?
Because they're at no effect in this project. They are required by law to be notified, and so they were. So if Ohio EPA has an issue, they contact U.S. EPA, but there's no endangered species or federal water issues that are going on here.
Has the endangered species survey been completed?
There's no endangered species survey. We're not doing any endangered species work. So, you know, trees that need to be removed have to be removed during a certain period of time by law because of the Indiana bat. But, you know, other than that, that's the only environmental constraint that we have as far as cutting trees down. And if landowners do it themselves, then no, that's only if we have a contract.
Additional questions for Mark? Yes.
Calvin Pope, Menneson County line, last person on the project. Question for the commissioners. In the revised code that we're using, as the engineer has already stated, the commissioners have to have reports on the effects of the land along the creek and below the construction area and the need for water outlet, as he stated. I'm asking you, before you make your decision, do you have an outline report for any of those in writing? And if so, what are they? I think everybody here would like to know, and I would like to know. What are those reports, and do you have them in writing?
We have the engineer's final report, his preliminary report and his final report. And I specifically asked him 3 times, once at one of our regular commissioners meetings, once today and once at the, before we granted petition, if he felt, as our expert by law, that it met the 8 criteria set forth in law, and he felt that it did.
I understand that part, what he said, but you have to have a report other than just one individual, like the engineers can say he made a report, but where is it? What kind of report is it? What kind of report did he get?
This is his final report here.
Well, on the proper outlet, the effects of the stream below the project in the Sandusky County, or on my project, which is the end, I have no benefit whatsoever. I'm paying a large assessment, no benefit. But beyond that, by what you read in the revised code, you need to have a certified report on the effects and the effects of the project below it.
It says,
and has he made, my knowledge is there's no effects been made in Sandusky County, nothing been studied. So what are we doing at the end of the project? Are we, where's our water gonna go and what effect will we have? That's what I'm trying to get to understand before you make a vote. We have no knowledge of that. There's nothing in this plan that states what effect it will have in below the project.
in the 6131.21, it says, in determining whether or not the improvement shall be granted, the board shall consider the following factors, And those were considered in his final report, he's told me 3 times.
Right, he considered it, but do you have that in writing, what they are? What are those reports? What do they say? What is the effects? Have you made a study of those effects? That's what's in this revised code.
Mark, how was your conclusion drawn?
There are no reports. I mean, as far as the efficiency of what happens in Sandusky County, we know Sandusky County floods. We know that the area downstream floods, especially when the river is up. And this project is not, will not change that. We have discussed many times the project of, there are no written reports to show the outlet.
When they start to come. Well, there's no study made, that's in the revised code.
Those things, not a written report was not made, but there certainly was taken into consideration in the plan.
There's nothing in the revised code says there has to be a written report. It said, the way I read it, says we have to consider the following factors. And I consider the final report the written report myself.
Yeah, I think we need an opinion from the prosecutor on that.
I'm just looking at the section right now, and that's exactly what it says.
You know what?
The factors that need to be considered, which we discussed.
Consider the factors.
Yes.
And which we have done, have considered the factors.
Additional questions? I think I saw a hand this way. Yes?
Can anybody involved in this give us any kind of cognitive, rational explanation as to who this is actually going to benefit? And what's the long-term effect? And let's say you're successful at removing all the log jams this week and all the trees that are dead this month, and it's going to reoccur down the road a year from now. Let's say we're successful at all that. Downstream, do those people qualify for flood insurance? Has anybody thought about that? Where does all this water go? And what do those people think about it? And we're gonna be doing this again in 2 years.
Well, as part of the project, it is required to go on maintenance, which means it will get an inspection, annual inspection. And if there are issues in the channel, then those would be addressed that year. As far as flooding downstream, we are not proposing adding not a single drop of additional water in this project that already comes here. What we are looking at doing is getting rid of the water that does come faster than what the river comes up, so that we can get rid of more water faster. Once the river's up, flow stops. But if we can get flow during that 1 to 2 day period all season long that we wouldn't have gotten before because it was all stuck in behind the log jams, then that is going to benefit all of the contributing landowners. So that's I guess the rationale.
Right here.
Dennis Crum. One question is that, okay, you're gonna go under the maintenance, we'll be under the maintenance deal, right? So every year, or whatever you decide, you're gonna come walk all these down through there, and if they got log jams, you're gonna take them out and charge the landowner every year, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, I'm not going to, but yes.
No, but that's
part of the maintenance project.
So that's what we're gonna be in. Everybody's gonna be in this maintenance deal, so every year, somebody is gonna go down through there and check.
Right. As part of code, it is required that any conservation work of improvement, any project like this, goes under permanent maintenance. And the reason for that is so we're never doing this again.
Trish?
Individual landowners, if you have a log jam on your property, you are not gonna pay, the entire watershed will pay. So the cost is gonna be spread out amongst all of you. It's gonna be much, much less than what it initially cost.
Additional questions for Mark or any of us?
Jerome Miller, typically. First one, an opinion of Mark. The flood of December 23rd. This one stopped it, like,
Oh, well, it won't stop the flood.
I mean, that much water, no matter how many log jams you get out, we're gonna have that mess that we had on the 23rd this year.
This is not a cure-all project. It is not going to stop flooding on every storm.
And you just stated one of your philosophies is to beat that river down Sandusky. Yeah, that's, I mean, philosophy is get the water out of the log jams, get down there. Because you said the water from the creek stops and the river comes up or slows down or whatever. When this project was petitioned in 2012, it was right after a heavy rain in Bettsville, and they closed the tracks, Bettsville, State Route 12 after tracks, for flooding. Now, Gary, you're standing here, you're Mayor of Tiffin, you know what, in Bettsville, you know what happened. This major flood of 23rd, they closed the tracks on 12th.
The last flood?
Yeah.
Well, they didn't close, they slowed the traffic down.
You had heavy water over
We
State
had
Route
water
12.
on Route 12, and yes.
Because what I'm getting at is, we have a Harry Lynch ditch that comes down through there behind Bettsville, drains into Wolf Creek right about 500 feet where we're stopping with this project. And if you're gonna bring up Wolf Creek faster, if Sandusky River stops Wolf Creek, is Wolf Creek gonna stop our ditch, which drains right down through dead center Bettsville? Are you gonna cause more problems in Bettsville now that you got that water from Wolf Creek down there quicker?
In my opinion, no. We're not.
I've been listening to all the back and forth on this thing for how long now? And me and my wife went and lived up on the river in Sandusky, up north of Fremont. And the mud that was on that boat when we got out of there, and I think this is more about taking out log jams. I think this is about getting that silt out of Lake Erie to try to prevent some of that. If anybody of you guys have ever walked creek banks and watch what happens when you have a log jam, how it just blows them sidewalls right out and shoves all that dirt down to the lake. I think as property owners, we should be taking care of our lake better than that. And somebody's worrying about whether they're spending $25, $50, when you become a property owner, I feel as if, you know, you take that upon yourself to do the best job you can do to protect our environment. That's my opinion.
Thank you. Any additional questions? And if not, we'll just phase this into general comments. Yes.
Currently, right now, the water's getting down quicker than it ever did before. It gets to the bridge there, the stone bridge there by Bettsville, and it's not getting through the bridge, it's going around the bridge. Is this gonna create more of a problem? Wash out the bridge someday or something with more water coming quicker? Because a third of the water, it's not going under the bridge now, it's going around the bridge.
And in my opinion, no.
Additional questions, not comments?
Mike Colbar, West Township Road 112. It's not more of a question, it's more of a kind of a informative thing. As a lot of you remember, this has been dealt with for a long, long time. And people have tried to get it taken care of. People blame the commissioners that are currently there and everything else. But you got to stop and think. Sandusky County does not want to clear out Wolf Creek. They want to leave the aesthetics. So there's where your problem's at. If anybody remembers, right there at Bettsville is where I just passed that bridge is where it goes, where it winds. But we can't do anything about Sandusky County. We have to take care of our county. You people cry when you get flooded. You people cry when you don't get flooded. So make up your mind. Don't blame the commission. It's something that has to be done, any way you look at it. And if it's not costing people any money, fine, you're saving money. If you have to pay an assessment every year for maintenance, pay the maintenance. But get the project done. I've seen the water back up, clean up on 23 when Wolf Creek floods. So that's a long ways away from Bettsville. And it's because of the log jams, the obstructions, everything else. So, you know, if you want to keep your property, keep getting flooded, then don't go for it. But if you want to save your property, go for it. But blame Sandusky County for the majority of the problems that we're having, especially in Bettsville and back up, because they will not clean Wolf Creek. The state of Ohio had to raise the bridge at Wolf Creek at 53 because of the flooding, because Sandusky County did not want to take care of their part of the road. The bridge at 53, on 53 at Wolf Creek would flood when we had a lot of high water, and they would shut down 53. 53 gets shut down in 3 spots right in here when we have flood water, because Sandusky County don't want to help us. So blame Sandusky County if you're going to blame anybody. Well, let's take care of our problem, because this has been going on for entirely too long, and people just cry and bellyache every time something happens.
If I can make a statement, in part of my research in this project of Wolf Creek, I had a meeting with Sandusky County engineers, the Sandusky County commissioner, one of them, and the engineer back in November, and we walked the Sandusky part of the of Wolf Creek. Now, we don't have a signed agreement, but we have a gentleman's agreement that if we open up Wolf Creek and the water still backs up at the Sandusky County line, that they would take corrective measures and to continue to clear out the Sandusky County part of it to the bridge, to the river. And again, that was discussions that that we've had with the engineer and one of the commissioners and stuff.
Do not want the aesthetics of the creek changed. Period. So now there's the one that you gotta get the word from. And a gentleman's agreement today doesn't mean anything.
No.
You may have a gentleman's agreement now, but when it happens, they might just turn around and say, we got nothing signed, we didn't shake hands, no. Because the people don't want it. Remember that. Because they can come back and bite you.
And the people don't want that.
Additional comments and or questions that would like to be made at this time? Yes.
You said there were 74 adjacent landowners.
I believe that's the correct number.
Okay, say all 74 of them done all their own work. The rest of us, the other 4,400 wouldn't get a bill? So what you're saying?
Well, that would, if everybody were to do their own work, then there would be no contract. And I guess the only work that would need to be done would be it would still, if the commissioner's affirmative, it still needs to go on maintenance. And so there would be that 10% charge, that small charge for establishing maintenance, but you're right, there would be no bill.
Be no bill.
Can you state your name for the record, please?
Oh, John Nye, Kansas.
Thank you.
Over by Kansas. You stated that you might pay the people that do it, so there would be some bill there, or you're saying if they would do it for free.
Yeah, we're not gonna pay them, but we will take it off their assessments.
You'll take it off their
Right,
assessment.
so, and if there's enough people that are willing to do it and the work can get done, then there won't be any assessments. See what I'm saying? I mean, if there's no contract because there's no work, then there's no bill.
So the work someone gets done to have come up with the assessment, is that just their entire?
No,
Is it just off
just
theirs?
off
individual?
theirs.
I want to make sure that it's.
If you do the work, your bill is zero.
No, you didn't say that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, if you did the work, your.
But if you do the work, on your own property, your bill should be zero.
Basically,
Well,
if you're that high, yeah. If you've got that much work on your property, yeah.
I got a question for Mark. Okay, Mark, if these commissioners pass this petition, do you have a timetable when you're gonna start and how long it's gonna take?
The estimation is that nothing would start at least until the fall of 14, after crops are off. More than likely, spring, summer, and fall of 15, the majority of it. And I say that because I want to make sure there's adequate time to meet with the property owners, see who is willing and able and to do work themselves before we actually try to put a contract together.
Yes.
When you remove the log jams, how will those logs be handled? Will they be piled and burned, or will they be left in the field for the landowner to deal with?
Generally piled up into the upland, out of the channel way. If the landowner certainly has the right to burn them on their own property, anything that's removed from your property can be burned on your property. We cannot do that, but property owners certainly can.
So if the field is adjacent, it'll be in the field.
Right along the tree line, yes. Yep.
You said that 10% of, that's what figure for maintenance? Of what? 10% of what?
Of the assessment. Whatever your, if your assessment, there are a lot of people that have an $11 assessment, and the reason is that there's a $10 minimum by Ohio law. It can't be less than $10, and then at 10% minimum, there's $10 minimum plus 10%, which is $1 maintenance, is also in that assessment.
Name for the record.
Well, final.
Additional questions and/or comments? Yes, back this way.
Roger Harris, Route 592. The maintenance fee, is that going to be assessed every year from whatever point in time this is approved?
Yes, and yes, but not necessarily at that rate. The funds for maintenance go into a particular fund for this project, and monies that are expended for the group are recollected from the group. So if there is $25,000 in the maintenance fund and the ditch maintenance department spends $5,000 that year, then that next year $5,000 would be collected to bring it back up. So it would not be that same number. It would be whatever comes out of the maintenance fund to reestablish it at that level.
Yes.
John Nye again, and getting back to this one work, and gave me an assessment of zero.
Project, you aren't gonna get charged.
Can you tell me what I can do, get mine to go to zero?
Yeah, I am going to meet with all property owners, yes.
I'm not along the creek line, show me what tree is cut.
Well, and that would be something that we would work out with the individual property owners. You know, as far as this project goes, if I'm a landowner and I've got trees to come down, and I take those down and I'm along the channel, then that's a direct benefit, that's correct. If another landowner is doing work with somebody else, then that's something we'll look at too, but there are areas I can just say, well, you go over here and work, you go over here and work, you go over there and work. We can't do that, but individual property owners can. Does that make any sense?
If he's not on the main channel, he cannot get his reduced directly.
Not directly, right.
So the 74 people along there, then get theirs reduced to zero, but I can't do nothing.
They cannot necessarily get it reduced to zero, depends on how many trees are in there,
Right.
what work needs to be done.
Yeah, it depends on what work
If
needs,
there's enough
right,
work.
if there's enough work to be done. And that's where all the work is on those property owners, so that's,
And the assessment is different based on the zones.
right.
So they're assessed the highest amount is the part that one.
I would be surprised if somebody can get it to zero, because they're still contributing to the flow of the project.
Oh, there are some property owners that have a lot of work to be done with the high assessment, and they can get their, absolutely get them to zero.
I apologize.
Yeah. Yeah, if you got large log GMs that are estimated at $2,500 a piece, and you've got a $2,500 assessment, then you take one log jam out and you're to zero. Yeah.
Plus you benefit everybody else.
Plus you benefit everybody else.
Yes.
Roger Harris again. If this is approved, or at the point it's approved, within 6 months or a year, everybody's going to be sent their assessment, right? Is that correct?
Mark's anticipating that until tax assessments in 2015 at
At least
earliest.
15.
That's what I didn't understand.
Additional comments and/or questions? Yes.
Angela Papagino, I was assessed almost $2,000, and we don't have any trees that are still up that need to be cut, because they came out 2 years ago and marked them all, and we've cut all the ones already down that are leaning, and there are no log jams, like, the adjacent property is full of log jams. Now, being that I'm assessed almost $2,000 for nothing that has to be done on my property, am I still paying for my neighbor who needs to have his jams taken out?
Basically, yeah, every landowner.
So I'm still gonna have to pay, even though I have nothing to do on my 80 acres. And I'm paying for my neighbor because he hasn't done anything. And
That's
another
what
question
petition
too is,
process is.
I have too is, almost 10 years ago, I was assessed to have a ditch cleaned out. And today, I'm still being assessed for that same ditch. And I'm worried if I'm gonna have the $1,800 or $1,900 on my taxes every year, is this gonna continue on for as long as I live there? Sorry. Because I have a lot of questions. This is gonna force me having to sell my property because I'm getting to the point where I can no longer afford to live there. I pay $10,000 a year in taxes. And I live in Seneca County. You know, I have farmland. And the only thing I grow is hay for crap. I don't make a lot of money, but just enough maybe to pay some taxes. And this is very, very, you know, I'm very concerned about this.
The commissioners approve the assessments each year of all the ditches that are on county maintenance, and it's a different number each year depending on the amount of work that needs to be done. Some years it's 0, some years it's 5%, some years it's 10%, depending on what work needs to be done. That would be a percentage of the original assessment. So it'll be different every year depending on the work that needs to be done. A lot of years there's 0. I don't know how this will come down.
Well, I'm kind of concerned, you know, the $30 a half that I pay for the ditch is no big deal, but $2,000 is a lot of money.
Okay, if I can correct, the $2,000 that you were assessed, that's to clean the ditch up. Only 10% of that is put in there for the ditch maintenance. So there's 200 that's put in there for ditch maintenance. Is that correct, Mark?
But that would be every year for ditch
No.
maintenance.
The odds of them spending depleting the entire maintenance fund to 0 every year that'd be tough. I mean,
It won't happen.
no, so I would say that there will be work to be done on the channel, every year, but not a full-blown, that would be, for you to get a $2 assessment, that would be doing this amount of work every year.
If I can make a comment, I mean, this is 40 years plus to get us to this point, which the $2,000, actually 1,800, 10%, roughly 1,800 of that is to take care of 40 years of problems. 200 is going into a bank account, which can be used to take care of the reoccurring thing. And again, what we got here is we got 40 plus years of ills that we're trying to correct.
Well, I've been there for 20 years, and before I bought the property and built a home on it, I was told that this ditch had been cleaned out, and the whole property was clear cut, and the whole ditch was dug out, the whole Hoof Creek was dug out. And that's when the Dillons used to own it. So this project is like going on, is gonna happen again, because of course, you know, you have lowland, you can't farm it, so trees and everything grows. So this is just probably gonna be happening again after so many years. Of course, I probably won't be alive anymore,
But there's only 200 of your assessment that's put in there.
Can I explain a little bit? To your right, Senator Solmeyer, let's talk a little bit about what maintenance we look at. We're really jumping again because we haven't even approved the project yet. But if you looked on average for a ditch project, you won't be charged that. The assessment that you're seeing now is for the beginning project, is for the construction costs. Assessments are based on what the original construction costs are in the future. So like if you're already on a ditch, we base our assessments on that original construction cost. On average, you're looking at maybe 5 to 10% if we do work on the channel. We typically can't hold more than 20% if we don't have a project in the works. So we can't just charge whatever we want. We want to charge more, we have to have a project in the work for that ditch. So looking at what you got on that piece of paper, that's the assessment for construction cost. Maintenance is going to be totally different, and you're going to look at maybe on average 5 to 10%, and that's only typically if we're doing work on it. I mean,
I don't think we've ever, there's only been one or two times that we've had a higher than a 20% assessment, and that's because I had a ditch that was in the negative, was in the red. We had done a lot of work, and so we were having to catch that ditch back up and get it back into the black. So understand that the assessments that you see now are not the assessments that you can see year after year after year. Those assessments will be different and will be lower. So.
What's the most
Thank
they
you.
can be? What percentage is the most they can be?
Well, it can be 100% of your assessment if we go in and have to do a major project. I mean, by law, we can only collect 20% a year if we don't have a project in the works. If we have work that needs to be done, we could collect all the amount of the project. So if we have to do a dip out, we can collect the full amount of the dip out. But we don't typically. We typically collect over a period of 3 years on dip outs. You know, we don't typically, on average, we hardly have ever collected over 20%. I think that's only, I've been here 10 years and that's only happened once.
That only happens when the ditch was constructed in the 60s or the 70s, and that cost back then does not equal the cost now, then the percentage is gonna be higher.
So, that was
That's
good.
the only Tricia and Ryan.
Okay, so that's just a little, but we are jumping way ahead ourselves because we haven't even approved the project yet. So.
To the back.
Got one question, I'm trying to clarify my thinking. Of the 74 adjacent landowners who have the potential to reduce their assessment to zero by completing the work on their section of the stream, what is the equity involved for the non-adjacent landowners who do not have that same opportunity to eliminate their assessment?
I don't know that. I can answer that, or that any of us here can answer that. That would have to be looked into.
I don't know if we do or not, because it's not a legal question. We're just trying to get people to do work on their own ditch. It's not a matter of legal equity, because it's not a legal question. The question is, can we get the work done without having to buy a contractor to do it?
Well, that's a sure legal question. I'm not going to argue the reality of it. I would disagree.
Okay.
Right here, please.
That's Wayne Thompson, Kansas. And I have adjacent property along the creek. Do I understand this right? In order for the adjacent landowners to get 0%, 100% of the people have to do the work?
Nope. If for an adjacent landowner,
100% of the people,
yeah.
adjacent properties, if they clean that.
If everybody cleaned the ditch in the next 9
But
months,
if only 50% of them clean it, everybody, adjacent owners are going to get assessed, right?
must use
So
it.
get on.
Any person that's willing to cut a single tree down is gonna make the entire project cheaper.
The back.
Yeah, back when Mr. Zoller was making reference as to doing the treatment, I happened to be there too, and so did our county engineer from Sandusky County and Commissioner. And in reference to some people wondering why Sandusky County isn't doing anything, a comment made by our county engineer said, standing right beside him, we were looking at the stream, this looks like a river. We haven't, and then Mr. Miller and the county engineer and the commissioner from Sandusky County said, there's no problems with the flow in Sandusky County. Is that correct?
That is my understanding, because there's white water in Sandusky
Right.
County.
So now, why are we still getting flooded? The water's coming down, it can't get into the river, it's backing up. And now you want to bring it down faster, it's going to make it worse in our area. Now, you wonder why we're complaining. Those are the facts, and the facts were right at that date. This is like a river in our area. It's 100, 200 feet wide?
At least.
At least. How much do we need in compare to the rest of the stream? And why are we still getting more floods? And in flood stage, it's like 600 feet in rapid cutting soil with sand. We have sand in Sandusky County. And the rock bottom, it's going. People wondering about the Sandusky River north, why we're getting soaked. There's no problems. We're not holding the water back. It's like a river. It's coming too fast. It's washing huge trees and everything out. We're back off the stream, cutting new channels. And it's wide open, like you said.
Not all Wolf Creek is wide open.
Depending on where you want to look, which channel you're looking at.
But if you look at right there at Bettsville.
That is not in Sandusky County.
That's right at the start of Sandusky County.
Well, yeah, I guess to eliminate that conversation between landowners, because I mean, you're right. The section of ditch we looked at was twice the distance across than what most areas of the Sandusky River are. So to do work in that area would be senseless. I mean, senseless. You couldn't. I didn't know where you would start. So to your point, we did meet, and you were right. It bigger the river up there. So.
Is this a legal formality, or you folks already made up your mind?
This is the final hearing, and giving the opportunity for what the discussions, have Mark prepared his final report, and we have to move forward and or set aside the petition is the plan for this final hearing today. Any other comments and or questions? Come before the hearing board.
Commissioner, Mike, I'd like to make a comment to Mr. Pope and to address your issue that the water's already flowing down at Sandusky County as a river. The thought process that was brought up is that it takes about 2 days for the Sandusky River to rise. If the water comes down slower from Wolf Creek, by the time it gets to the Sandusky River, the river's rose, so it backs up. So if we could, the thought process, if we get the water down quicker, down to the river before the river rises, that way it can flow out.
I understand that, but I happen to have lived in that area for over 50 years, and I haven't seen that. The actual fact is maybe once in maybe 20. And I'm sure there's many other people who live in the area who say, it sounds like a good idea, but we've already got the water flowing too fast. It's causing problems down in our area. Yet we want to speed it up and get it there faster, make it faster yet.
Mark, what's the elevation? Mark, what's the elevation between the lake or the river and Seneca County?
I would have to look at that. We didn't study that. I don't know.
It's quite a drop, isn't it?
Dalton would probably know that better than me.
Madam Chair, I would make a few comments or motion to that order.
Yes, please.
Just make a few comments before the motion here. Throughout this process, the commissioners have tried simply to follow the Ohio Revised Code. We all held up our hands and swore that we would follow the laws we were sworn into office. Once a petition is filed, we have a ditch cleaned through the petition process. It sets forth a series of events to determine whether or not we grant the petition. It's not whether I like the project or whether I like the people involved with the project or don't like them. That's irrelevant. We've tried simply to follow the law throughout this process. We've had the viewings, the hearings, the mailings. We've ordered the engineer to do a report. We've received his preliminary report, his final report. Now, according to Ohio Revised Code, at the final hearing, we either affirm the decision granting the petition, which we granted it back in December of 12. We either affirm that or we set it aside. There are 8 things that we consider. I have asked Mr. Zimmerman 3 times whether he feels those are satisfactorily met as our expert, and he feels that they are. So based on that fact, I feel this board is obligated by law to affirm the granting of the petition. Therefore, I move that we grant the petition, I move that the granting of the petition be affirmed and we proceed with the work.
Do I have a second?
I would second that.
I have a motion and a second to grant the petition, and we had prepared 2 resolutions, one if it was granted and one if it was set aside. I would ask the clerk at this point just to state the title of that resolution And then maybe the opening part of it, I don't think it's necessary to read the whole resolution.
Doing up the affirming, resolution affirming.
Can't
the
hear
board's
you.
orders- Excuse me, a resolution affirming the board's orders of granting the petition, ordering the Seneca County engineer to remove obstructions from the main channel of the west branch of Wolf Creek.
Thank you. And then from the hearing board, any additional comments or questions? Take the roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Wagner,
Yes.
Commissioner Zoller,
Yes.
Commissioner Stacy.
Yes. Petition is affirmed. At this point, then, since we have affirmed, we will have to deal with the resolution to establish the payment structure. That is the additional part of that from 6131.23. It is outlined as stated earlier in discussions today. That payment process up to anything over $500. And we have a draft resolution prepared as well so that this could be acted upon if we affirmed to determine what that would be. And in this resolution, which is the matter of resolution setting the payment structure for the main channel of the west branch of Wolf Creek, and in the sixth paragraph, it outlines what 6131.23 states, which is that in a nutshell, under $25, it's upon the billing in one payment, up to $500, two payments in semi-annual in accordance with your other tax assessments, and if over $500, we have the ability to set up